Good evening. I'm Savita Krishnamurthy, co-organizer with Black Cinema Collective, and I extend a warm welcome to the first of three installments of our inaugural presentation, Black Spatial Elegance. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that we live and work on the stolen ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples and shared waters of all tribes and bands, named and unnamed, including Suquamish, Duwamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We recognize that additionally, this landscape has been shaped by Chinese, Japanese, and Filipino laborers who have built railroads and worked in mines, crop fields, logging camps, and salmon canneries, as well as African Americans who have worked in shipyards and founded the Northwest Enterprise, a newspaper serving a key role in supporting Black communities in Seattle. We pay respects to elders past and present. Black Cinema Collective is a Washington-based group of artists and cultural practitioners who examine and celebrate Black films through program screenings, watch parties, and community discussions focusing local and global filmmakers from African and Afro-diasporic communities. We hold space for the complex existence and storytelling inventions of Black folks, also curating intersectional histories and topical stories seen in multidisciplinary forms of filmmaking from artists, activists, documentarians, and organizers. Through our work, we explore the broad multiplicity of Afro-diasporic cultures.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Berette Macaulay, and it gives me great pleasure to bring you into our program, Black Spatial Elegance, New Cinematic Language of Global Black Music. This is our first year, and tonight's event is the first of three events for our program, presented by Black Cinema Collective in community partnership with Wa Na Wari, Seattle International Film Festival, Langston Seattle, and Henry Art Gallery, where we're streaming now live on YouTube and on BCC's Facebook. So Black Spatial Elegance recognizes and celebrates Black Music Month in Seattle, where we foreground the influence of Black music through the visual and cinematic legacies of video, films, art direction, and design produced by Black storytellers and artists throughout the Black diaspora. Tonight's event, or tonight's program, An Evolutionary History of Visual Art and Music, is led by Devan, Kirk, and Cassidy, Correia. Next week, Thursday, July 1st, we will have a panel, Black Spatial Elegance, Sight and Sound, featuring guest artist, local rap artist Rell Be in conversation with me, the program director of Langston, Jazmyn Scott, and co-founder and director of Wa Na Wari and artist, Inye Wokoma. And the following week, our third event in this installment will be on July 7th, hosted by the Henry, called Serious Things, a panel with Wayne Chen in conversation with music artist manager Steve Urchin Wilson and special guest film producer, writer, art collector, and music producer Maxine Walters. A little bit about our programming and why is we are interested in looking at the work that visual work that has been made in conjunction with and in support of and in amplification of Black music, situating our selections within global discourses of class, caste, economy, hegemony, and style, understanding the intersections and nuanced differences among Black cultures and how this shows up in cinematic modes of storytelling. We'll be looking at all of this through lenses of temporal structure of music films, the long album film, looking at celebrity and independent artists, looking at the history of this from Thriller to Rhythm Nation to Lemonade. We'll be thinking about the diasporic imaginaries, looking at artists like Michael Kiwanuka, Seattle's Nathan Nzanga, Blitz Ambassador, and Trinidad's Freetown Collective, to name a few. We'll also be looking at the subversive codes and signifiers and class protests that show up in music videos, looking at artists like Flying Lotus and Kendrick Lamar to Childish Gambino, and then thinking through and holding ourselves in the liberation aesthetics and futurism of Missy Elliott and Prince and Sonny Colon. We'll be looking at a lot of artists over the next few weeks. Please follow our Facebook, our Twitter, and our Instagram, and especially our YouTube channel, because we are trying to build that space out through this program and all our other programs to come. And just for you to know that every event that we have in Black Spatial Elegance will have an accompanying playlist that will be posted after we put up our events. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll be dropping those links in our spaces.
And if you're able to, please, you can donate via PayPal and Venmo. Your donations are tax deductible, and we are really honored to be fiscally sponsored by Northwest Film Forum. So we kick off our 3-week programming with tonight's presentation, An Evolutionary History of Visual Art and Music, presented by Devan, Kirk, and Cassidy, Correia. The playlist will follow after our event airs. And before I hand it over, a huge thank you to Ian Saporin of Henry Art Gallery for all the tech support for tonight's program. We could not have done it without you, Ian. So thank you so much for all of your help. And without further ado, I will hand it off to our fabulous presenters for this evening, Devan, Kirk, and Cassidy, Correia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for an evolutionary history of visual art and music. My name is Cassidy, Correia, and I am joined here today with Devan, Kirk. A little bit about me before we get started. Like I said, my name is Cassidy. I use the pronoun she, her, and I'm a senior here at the University of Washington. My current major is international studies with a focus in international human rights, and I'm also minoring in Portuguese and Luso-Brazilian studies. And then I'll let Devan introduce himself here.
Hi, I'm Devan. I am a graduated senior from the University of Washington. I just finished my degree in anthropology and art, Bachelor of Arts, and I also had a minor in art history. I'm continuing my education in the Netherlands at the University of Amsterdam this fall, where I'll be studying cultural and social anthropology. I'll be getting a Master's of Science in that there. Thanks, Cassidy.
Yeah, of course. So a little bit about us. We are both former art liaisons at the Henry Art Gallery, where we work to facilitate a bridge between the art and our community. And really today we hope to bring the same philosophy. Right now I'm going to share my screen. Devan, are we able to see this okay?
Yep, it's great.
Perfect. We would love to just take this opportunity here to say thank you so much to Black Cinema Collective for inviting us to speak today. This is a really incredible opportunity, and we are both so excited to be here. Really, prior to our time as art liaisons, I personally had never given much thought to the history and the evolution of album covers, which is kind of strange in my case because my father is actually a musician, so I grew up in a recording studio, but it wasn't something that ever crossed my mind until Devan and I got talking as art liaisons. We found out that we both had a love of vinyl records, and one day when we were talking, we became curious about this evolution, which takes us now to Columbia Records. So the first art director, or the director of art, was Alex Steinwies, who introduced the very first album cover in 1939 via graphic design. This was a very stark contrast to the standard brown paper covers of the time. And by introducing art on album covers, sales exploded exponentially. And it really revolutionized not only marketing, but also the relationship between music and visual art, which made it a perfect starting point for our talk today. And according to Stymies, the typical brown paper, or sometimes it was green or tan, these paper covers had no sale appeal. And then after introducing a cover, sales exploded by 800%, which was really the incentive that was needed for Columbia Records to standardize this practice.
So here we have Rainbow by Kesha, and this is a lot more of a recent album. Kesha just released this. This was her 4th studio album, and you can see that album art has kind of evolved. It has gone from the stark, just straightforward pictures and images that you saw with Columbia Records album to now we have symbolism, and we have artistic, like, historical references. So here you can see like symbolism towards like the religious. So like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There is Kesha standing in the ocean, which is almost symbolic of like a baptism and rebirth of herself. There's a lot of allusion to mysticism and the unknown, and that's something that Kesha very much covers in her album. And then overall, there's a lot more artistic symbolism that is put into album covers nowadays compared to what there used to be. Although that is not always the case, as you will see soon.
Absolutely. So now we're crossing over into visual expression of the artist through album covers and album art. To begin, we would love to talk about the album Bitches Brew by Miles Davis. This was released in 1970, and it really mixed jazz and rock and a very bold experimentation of this jazz fusion that pioneered a really new age. And this was done by a French artist of German origin named Maddie Clarwin, who created this cover for Davis's new music while also examining and commenting on social tensions, on jazz fusion, on perspective and experience of this time. And something that I personally really love about this album cover is the vibrance and the depth. You can see kind of this play between the art and the music here with that like very suggestive of different elements that are being pulled together, such through the hands.
Here you have Last Days in Time by Earth, Wind and Fire. And so Maddie Clarwin also made this cover. As you can see on the cover, there's a lot of references to Black culture and Black community. And so a lot of this album, if you have the chance to listen to it, it's almost psychedelic. It's not necessarily psychedelic, but there's a lot of funk elements, there's a lot of R&B elements, there's a lot of soul elements, there's a lot of funk elements to it. And that's very much translated in this album cover. They use a lot of themes of Black power, Black love, and Black creativity and Black community in this album. And you can very much see the synergy and the energy between the album cover art that you see here and the actual songs also on the album.
Absolutely. And moving on, we have Abraxas by Santana. Now, interestingly enough, this was also artwork by Maddie Clarwin. This is his 1961 piece, Annunciation, which really mixed religion, mythology, fantasy, symbolism, and psychedelia, all of which you can see in this very, very detailed piece here. Something that's kind of interesting, though, is this was not made for Santana, like the past two that we've examined with Earth, Wind, and Fire and Miles Davis. This was an actual piece that, due to Maddie Clarwin's notoriety after, working with other artists and musicians, Santana kind of adopted this for their album here. So Maddie Clarwin is very big in the album art cover world, and this was something that I never knew prior to looking into it, which I think is really, really interesting.
So next we have Protest Through Musical and Sonic Arts, and that is very much apparent when you look at some of the songs that were also produced in this kind of era, and you also look at the album cover art, which was very much putting spotlights and highlights on people and artists who were protesting through their music. So here we have Soul Can Soul by Nina Simone. So like I said, there's a lot of protests in art and publicity. Nina Simone is a Black woman. she immediately threw the question of what is it to be a Black woman in the music industry? What is it to be Black in the music industry? And so on this album, Silk and Soul, she had I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free. And that is a protest song, straight up. I still listen to this song to this day. It's one of my favorite songs, if not my favorite song. Silk and Soul, I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free is a song that very much questions what is freedom and how can Black people achieve that. And so Silk and Soul was very much an embodiment of protests.
Yeah, protest through music was not something that was specific to the US. This was something that was happening internationally. Here we have Caetano Veloso's self-titled album from the 1960s. He is a Brazilian artist from Bahia, the state of Bahia, which is in northeastern Brazil. And this album is a really core to the Tropicalia movement, which began with artists such as Caetano Veloso under the military dictatorship in Brazil. This album itself was designed by a Brazilian graphic designer named Rogério Durante, who is also kind of one of those founding leaders of Tropicalia and the movement itself. Here we see Caetano Veloso, and he's giving a very defiant look, surrounded by, of course, biblical references such as Eve herself and the snake. And then we have some fantanical elements as well with a dragon. And this defiance is also translated into his music at a time of censorship under military dictatorship. And we're going to be moving on next to Marvin Gaye.
This is What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. It's very much also a protest anthem. This is a single released by Marvin. And so this brings forth the Black experience to a white audience. It actively engaged the listener or viewer of what's going on. So Marvin Gaye released this song around in the time of the civil rights era. And so it questioned like what is going on. Check in with your neighbors, check in with your family members, check in with your friends. Doesn't matter their race, their color, their creed. You need to check in. You need to see what's going on. And so this album, in particular, this song, very much brought to light just the social interactions that we have every day. How can we check in? Like what's going on with the people? And a lot of people at this time were in pain. And so it was good to just reach out to someone and have a shoulder to lean on. And Marvin Gaye very much captured that in the song. And just the politics of being with each other and being with your community is almost like protest in itself, especially in a time when people were trying to tear community apart.
And music also, again, we're heading back south to Brazil, where music was used to empower and foster conversations among the population. Another really, really influential artist in Brazil is Gilberto Gil. He was also extremely central to the Tropicalia movement. He also served as he's now the former Minister of Culture of Brazil. This is his self-titled album, Gilberto Gil, which was released in 1968. Both Gilberto Gil and Caetano Veloso were born in Bahia. They met in 1963 at the University of Bahia and have shared a very long career together. They're still very close friends. And they soon pioneered Tropicalismo, which was very heavily influenced by Western rock. And it was the tools and kind of the anthem to these counterculture protests in the 1960s. In Brazil's military dictatorship, which began in 1964. And by 1968, there was this crackdown on free speech with a lot of censoring of music and live performances. And through their albums, both Gilberto Gil and Caetano Veloso had kind of garnered attention from the government. And they were actually arrested and charged with degrading the national flag and the Brazilian anthem on live television. They were viewed as threats to the nation. And they were actually exiled and jailed. And although the official story is that they were invited to leave. So here we see that through music is very powerful. It has very strong motivations. It can lead to conversation and movement and action.
So here we're moving on towards the simple branding and symbolism in album cover art. You see this a lot more today with music albums and music covers. You don't have a lot of complex patterns like you were seeing prior, or it's like protest. You see a lot more just symbolism of like self or symbolism of the artist's brand.
One of the most iconic examples of this is, of course, The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. This was their 8th studio album that was released in 1973. So by then they had 8 albums out. They were pretty well known, and they were allowed to just have this very iconic prism for The Dark Side of the Moon. And everybody, almost everyone, you see this and you know, oh, that's Pink Floyd. So they've transitioned from just standalone album art to kind of a brand that they have created for themselves. And this was created by the English graphic designer Storm Thorgerson. And this is actually one of his most well-known works, although he has worked with hundreds of other artists. And so through this, we really see that we see this transition over into when bold album covers allows for artists to speak for themselves and their notoriety.
Here we have the Pinkprint by Nicki Minaj, and it has another use of symbolism. Almost like Pink Floyd's Prism, this has almost become a brand for Nicki Minaj, not necessarily the pink fingerprint, but pink. Pink is something that Nicki Minaj very much is associated with her image and with her brand. And so here it created this like a simple, memorable album title. We have songs such as Anaconda, Pretty Dem Girls, Only, that came off of this album. And for a lot of young people, those songs really ring. Like we don't necessarily, like I don't think they ring necessarily with us particularly, but they're songs that we're familiar with, that we've heard before. And Nicki Minaj is someone who is very much well esteemed. She's very much in this music industry for a long time. She's been here for a long time, and she's iconic. And so this really added to her brand and image at the end of the day. And so the Pinkprint is an album that is very much rings true to who Nicki Minaj is. And this is probably one of her best albums to this day.
And something I really love about this album is, although it's rather simplistic in nature, with that fingerprint, it's extremely complex because, you know, everyone has a very unique and individual fingerprint, just as Nicki Minaj and her image and her brand has that own unique fingerprint that nobody else has.
Exactly. Yeah, Nicki Minaj is someone that no one else can really replicate who she is.
No.
So.
And here we have an even more recent example of this with Flower Boy by Tyler, the Creator. This was an album that was released in 2017. And this cover was actually a result of collaboration between Tyler himself and the painter Eric White. In place of words, we have bees. There are 10 bees and 10 artists included in the album. And there's this color palette which reflects the album itself, or I should say, it reflects the mood and the sound of the album itself. And really there's this flower motif towards the bottom that's representative of Tyler's personal growth and the growth through his sound. Tyler and White initially collaborated to bring this album cover to life. They even drew upon some of Tyler's own personal sketches, which I think is really cool. And the piece is actually a 16 by 16 inch canvas, which is much smaller than what Eric White typically works with. So he's actually stated that this was sort of a challenge, but I think he really delivered, and there's so much detail in this piece. There's even a tiny white McLaren on the road, which is so small you can barely see it. Even I'm thinking on Spotify or iTunes, when you're streaming something, it's so hard to see all of the detail that's captured in this when you're just streaming and have that tiny little image there, which is why I really love the physical vinyl for this one. And something that I didn't know before, which I think is really cool, is that Eric White is actually a fan of Tyler's. And I think that it's really incredible that they were able to collaborate on this. He was actually working alongside one of his fans.
Here we have the cultural shift towards music videos and the revolution that MTV created. So the very first music video to ever be aired was aired on August 1st, 1981, and it was Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles. This is very much an iconic song. I personally, before I did the research for this, have never seen a music video, but the song very much stuck. There's a lot of elements in that song that are very much still sampled today. And so this was the very first music video to be aired, and this was the start of the music video era, which led to a lot of iconic music videos.
And of course, the most iconic is none other than Michael Jackson's Thriller. This was released in 1983. It was 13 minutes long, and MTV streamed the full music video, all 13 minutes of it. At its time in 1983, it was the most music video ever made with a budget of $500,000. And during its initial release, the demand was actually so high that Thriller was played twice an hour, and it continues to be streamed regularly to this day, even though that was released nearly 40 years ago. And really, I think that this has transcended just a music video. It is certainly a fixed piece of pop culture.
Absolutely. This song is, you see a lot of music videos nowadays, and a lot of them have been able to be turned into like actual almost like video novels. Like we have Dirty Computer by Janelle Monáe, and you have Electra Heart by Marina and the Diamonds, but I don't think any of those ever feature a singular music video that's 13 minutes long. And I think that's just a testament to how big and how amazing that Michael Jackson's mind was, that he was able to produce a 13-minute music video. That's still almost virtually unheard of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the fact that it has captured attention decades later is really a testament to his legacy.
Mm-hmm. Here we have Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody, and on the right we have 4 stills from her music video. And so a lot of things that a lot of people were focusing on back then were, you know, like how do we make this video like capture what we wanted to capture? And so dark skin in front of a video camera, in front of a camera itself, was not something that had a lot of attention, that had a lot of science that was put behind it. The camera was made for light and whiter skin. And so because of that, it's hard to pick up on darker and black skin when you're in front of a camera. And so this was actually one of like the very first instances where you see like this multitude of color being used on dark skin and how that can reflect dark skin in front of a camera. Aside from Whitney Houston and Michael Jackson and a lot of other Black music artists who were producing music videos at the time, Oprah Winfrey was actually one of the leading forces of the science of understanding the science of black skin in front of a camera. Oprah actually created her own brand of camera that actually picked up on darker skin a lot better. And so a lot of Black artists started to end up using and adopting the practices that other Black artists like Whitney and Michael and Oprah had kind of pioneered.
Absolutely, and it's something that you see today. And now we're going to be moving on from the era of MTV. And just as the music visual art relationship was revolutionized by MTV, a second transformation came about in 2006 with the creation of YouTube. YouTube by now has pretty much replaced MTV, and it has given more flexibility and accessibility to artists and their fans. YouTube provides on-demand access to music videos from around the globe, and it continues to merge the relationship between visual art and music. And of course, one of the most talked about music videos is Childish Gambino's music video for This Is America, which has prompted countless analyses. Since it was released in 2018, it now has over 726 million views. It has very, very powerful imagery and symbolism, which you pick up on something new every single time that you watch this music video. As of right now, This Is America has 976,000 comments and countless YouTube videos and articles and scholarly essays have been created just to analyze and pick up on the insanely complex music video that is This Is America.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail in this music video, like the position that he's in and like the symbolisms that were used in this. And I when I was on TikTok the other day, I saw that there was like almost like it was trying to unpack the idea that like it was trying to distract from a lot of other things that are going on, right? And so like I never noticed personally that like SZA was in this music video. I never noticed that. But a lot of people did, you know? And so like there's little things that we as Americans like have to pick up on. And Donald Glover really did a great job at picking those things out.
Yeah, you absolutely pick up on something new every single time. And if you haven't watched this music video or if it's been a while, I definitely recommend that you go back and watch this because you definitely will pick up on some new things.
Here we have a still from FKA Twigs, Cellophane. And so Cellophane, I think personally, and Pitchfork apparently also thinks it's one of the most iconic songs of the 2010s. Pitchfork ranked it the third best song, or third most engaging, interesting. I don't know what the criteria was. The third best song of the 2010s, and so a lot of that was attributed to the music video because it's very much an emotional piece. In this video, it's almost like she's going over a rebirth of herself, and there's beautiful dancing, and the images like this one you see here, they're just stunning, they're gorgeous. You take a lot, there's a lot of influence behind the ranking and the love of the song because of the music video. This music video is very much part of the song just as much as the music is, and it's an ethereal experience to be able to watch something like this. And I think this music video is actually so popular that recently this year in 2021, Lil Nas X released his Montero, Call Me By Your Name. And so he, uh, he got into a little bit of an argument with FKA Twigs because there was a spot in Montero where it was a little bit too similar to a big section of FKA Twigs Cellophane. So I think that's just a testament to how influential this music video was.
Absolutely. And sorry.
You're fine. And so actually I think that was funny because you know there's other ways to connect with people through music. And so everyone's going to kind of recognize this one if you were on the internet between 2006 and 2010. You definitely at this point in time ran into Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley. And so there's music videos don't have to just be for like the entertainment purpose of creating a video for you to watch, but it was almost like some of these can be created into jokes. Rick Rolling was created in 2007 where thought you were watching a video, but then you got the music video of Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley. Music videos can also be translated into humor, pranking jokes while using YouTube as that client. And so you send a video to a friend, and then they get Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley. And so that was a way for people to connect using music videos on YouTube as well.
And it's not just YouTube anymore. I feel as though it's nearly every social media site. It's inevitable that at some point in time you will get rickrolled.
Mm-hmm.
And now, lastly, to kick us off, we have Despacito by Louis Fonsi featuring Daddy Yankee. This has actually been dethroned. It was for a long time the most viewed YouTube video in history. It is now the second most viewed music video in history. It sits at 7.4 billion views, which is insane to think about. It also has 4.1 million comments since it was initially released in January of 2017. However, even with billions and billions of views, it has only made about $15 million from YouTube in royalties, which leaves us with a question about artist royalties through YouTube and other streaming platforms.
Yeah, I think that leaves us with a great question of, do artists when they put their own stories and their own lives to create their own art on the line, like, are they getting the compensation that they deserve?
Definitely something to think about. And also the artists who create the album covers do not get enough recognition for their work, even though they have contributed to countless parts of iconic pop culture. They don't get their share of the notoriety from that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you so much for coming to our presentation. We hope we found something educational, or if you learned something from this. Album art and album covers and music videos are really important to me and Cassidy. And we wanted to help share a little bit of our knowledge about it. And so at the end of the day, music is something that we all listen to. It's something that we can all learn to appreciate. But I think taking the time to actually educate ourselves about the other parts that go into music is just as important. So again, thank you so much. Hope you have a good day and have a good time at this whole conference. It's a really great conference to be at. So
thank you so much.
Wow, that was really incredible. Thank you so much, Devan and Cassidy, for your research and work and enthusiasm in sharing this very broad swath of music history with us. And I just want to let everybody know that we will have a playlist. Well, it's up now on the Black Cinema Collective YouTube channel. There's a playlist of every artist that that Devan and Cassidy just spoke about. And also you will be able to see this recording. It will be living on the Henry Art Gallery YouTube page, as well as our own and Facebook. So I think it will be. Is that right, Henry? Ian, I don't know. Maybe this recording will be living on the BCC YouTube page. And yeah, so you'll be able to follow this along and listen to all of this great music and check out these album covers. And thanks again so much to Devan, Kirk, and Cassidy Correia for this fantastic presentation and for kicking off Black Spatial Elegance. Tune in next week.